Welcome to the laws of cooking on Shabbat. This will be part 21 of the class. Today's topic, forbidden to use, permissible to sell. In the earlier classes, when we began halachot Shabbat, we started speaking about that if a person went ahead and he cooked food on Shabbat, knowingly that one is not allowed to do so. We said that the person that cooked the food on Shabbat could never ever eat that food, not on Shabbat, not after Shabbat. The food is forbidden on him. The question we want to see today, can he sell that food? Give it as a present. Maybe feed his dogs with it. So Rav David Yosef Shlita addresses this halacha in his Sefer Halacha Berurah, and he begins, Tavshel shenit bashel b'Shabbat b'mezid. If you had someone who went ahead and he cooked the food on Shabbat knowingly, even though we said that it is forbidden for that person that cooked for consumption forever, he could never ever eat it. Nevertheless, nevertheless, he is allowed to benefit from it. Why is he allowed to benefit? When the Chachamim made it asur to use that thing where a prohibition was done in it, like in our case with cooking the food on Shabbat, that is specifically in a way that that object is used. In our situation, how do you use that food? Through eating it. So good. So the Chachamim only asked through eating it. Therefore he says, Mutar limchor et oto tavshel achar Shabbat la'achirim. Therefore you are allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to sell that food after Shabbat to other people, or to give it to them as a present. So comes Rav David Yosef Shlita and he addresses the halakha and he says, look, even though you went ahead and you did it on Shabbat, meaning you cooked it on Shabbat knowingly, which you were not allowed to do it, you went ahead and you cooked a food on Shabbat knowingly, the Chachamim said, how do you use that food? Through consumption, through eating it. Since in that food there was a prohibition done, we're never going to allow you to consume it. It's only the consumption that one is not allowed to do. But any other benefit, one can benefit. For example, selling it to someone else after Shabbat, or giving it to someone else as a present, or even giving it to your dog to eat. Because the Chacham only said that you're not allowed to benefit through consumption, because the way, the usage of the food is to eat it. The same is going to, the same halach is going to apply in this. The same halach is going to apply in this situation in regards to other malachot that a person went ahead and he did on Shabbat knowingly. For example, he says, Kigon, Shetafar beged or asa kli latzmo. What happens if a person went ahead? He went ahead and he stitched for himself a nice garment, a nice shirt, nice pants on Shabbat for usage. Or he made for himself a utensil he wanted to drink from. So he went and he made a utensil on Shabbat. He says over here, Sha'asur lo lilbosh et oto beged. It is forbidden for him to wear that clothing that he stitched on Shabbat. Or lishtamesh be'oto kli, or to use that utensil. Why? Sha'arei na'asol letorkach, because a beged is done for that purpose. A beged is done to wear. A utensil is done for drinking or for whatever other usage you made it for. So therefore you are not allowed to use it. That is done where you use them. Aval, however, he says, mutar lo lemechoro la'achirim, but you are allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to sell it to other people. So it comes out of here, if a person went ahead and he tailored for himself a shirt, pants, or even a suit on Shabbat, he wanted to wear it. Or he went ahead and he made for himself a cup on Shabbat, he formed a new cup, he wanted to use it. Rabotai, after Shabbat, he can't wear that clothing, he can't use that utensil. Since he did an act which was knowingly, intentionally, and there was a prohibition done in that maseh, in that act, we're going to tell you, you yourself could never ever benefit from wearing that clothing or using that utensil. But we're going to tell you, you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to sell it to other people, or like we said before, you could also give it to them as a present. But you yourself, Rav David Yosef says over here, Rabotai, שאסור לו ללבוש את אותו בגד או שלהשתמש באותו כלי. You are forbidden from using that beged, that garment, or you are forbidden from using that utensil. Right over here. But we did mention you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to sell it or to give it as a present. Right over here. Okay. Now, Rabotai, there's a very important condition we have to know. All this that we just said up to now, that is specifically when you were doing it for yourself. However, when it comes that you're doing business with this, there, Rabotai, even they can benefit. Watch this. And nevertheless, when did we say this whole halakha that you're allowed to go ahead and sell it or give it as a present? That is specifically where you didn't cook it or you didn't stitch the garment on condition to sell it to other people. You were doing it for yourself. You wanted to eat the food. You wanted to wear the garment. Aval, however, but if you did it on condition to sell to other people, you're not allowed to sell it to other people. So therefore, if I cooked food on Shabbat knowingly, or I tailored a garment, or I made a utensil, or anything else I did on Shabbat for myself knowingly, I myself could never use it. But I could sell it to other people. However, if I cooked the food, or tailored the garment, or fashioned the utensil to sell it to other people, now I can't even sell it to them. Like we'll see, it's going to be explained later on. When a person comes to sell something which is forbidden on him forever because he did a forbidden act on Shabbat knowingly, you're allowed to sell it in a way where you're going to profit from the object. You don't have to sell it exactly what it's worth, what the cost is to you. You could even sell it above the average price. For example, if it costs you to make the food $40, now you want to make a profit of $20, you can sell it for $60. You don't have to go ahead and sell it at the cost price. However, he says, however, if somebody wants to be stringent and not to sell something where he's going to profit from it, since there was a chilul Shabbat, since there was a desecration done with that thing, he says, Tavo Allah beracha, Hashem should bless him with blessings. What happens if that person died, that went ahead and he did the prohibited act on Shabbat knowingly? Mutar lebanav leYerushav leechol or lishtamesh beoto davar achar Shabbat. His children or his inheritors allowed to eat or use that thing after Shabbat. Rabotai, small review. Core principle. When someone cooks or does another forbidden act on Shabbat on purpose, the sages penalized him by forbidding him to benefit in the normal way from what he made. For example, if he cooked food, his normal use is eating it, so therefore he can never eat it. If he sewed a garment, his normal use is wearing it, so therefore he can never wear it. But this prohibition is limited only to the normal direct use of the item. Any other kind of benefit is permitted. So therefore we're going to speak about selling or gifting after Shabbat. Even though he may not eat the cooked food, he can sell it or give it as a gift after Shabbat. The same with clothing or tools he made on Shabbat. He can sell them to others. This is because selling or gifting is not the normal way of benefiting from the item. It's not the intended use of food or clothes. Important condition, Rabotai. If he cooked or made the item with a specific intention of selling to others, then it's worse. In such a case, he may not sell it after Shabbat because then the benefit is exactly what he intended when desecrating Shabbat. Profiting on the sales. If he does sell the item after Shabbat, he may even make a profit. Still, some say it's better not to profit from something that came through a chilul Shabbat. Whoever is strict not to profit is praiseworthy. Last but not least, what about the inheritors? If the person who did the malacha dies, his children or heirs are allowed to eat or use the item after Shabbat. Rabotai, have a blessed day. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen.